Let's do this. The Cult of Hockey podcast by the faithful and for the faithful. I'm David Staples of the Edmonton Journal, and I'm here today with Bruce McCurdy, who is down on the bottom of my screen here, so I'll be looking down at Bruce a lot. Hey, Bruce.
Good morning, David. How are you?
Just looking down at you, literally, not figuratively, Bruce.
Right. Okay, got it.
As always. So, Bruce, we actually had a hockey game yesterday to watch on the internet. And it was a good hockey game. I thought it was kind of an exciting hockey game. Although the Oilers lost 7-3 to the Flames rookies in Calgary, there was lots to like from an Oiler fan's perspective, and that I thought each of probably the top prospects, except for Kirill Maximov, all played really well. Maximov was kind of lost; he didn't have much impact on the game, but Evan Bouchard, Ethan Bear, Tyler Benson, Cooper Marody, Tyler Yamamoto all had their moments in the game. What did you think of it?
Well, I think there was this huge divide between the top six and the bottom six.
Yeah.
On the back end, between the top three and the bottom three, and the lower players got exposed. And the funny thing was that was more of the older players, by and large, that were playing down the lineup, with the exception of the man you mentioned, Kirill Maximov, who did get stuck on the third line, and that line didn't create a whole lot. He had a couple of moments, one good shot, but certainly he was not the force that our Cult of Hockey rankings might suggest that he should have been in his inaugural game.
Yeah. So today, Bruce, we're going to talk about that game. And of course, we're also going to go through the right D prospects. So let's finish off talking about the game with Bouchard and Bear. Let's talk about some of the other players. You really like Caleb Jones. I thought Jones had a high event game. And that he skated miles. He's fast as hell, man. Can that guy move? He's got NHL. It's always great to see an NHL a player in a game like this, which is basically kind of an AHL level game, who's clearly flashing some NHL level skill in some area. And Jones, two players stood out for this in this regard for me in this game, in Caleb Jones and Tyler Benson. So Jones stood out because his skating is fantastic and clearly at an NHL level, and makes me think the Oilers could have an NHL player here one day once he gets his reads done. And I really love how aggressive he is playing the game of hockey. He made all kinds of good plays all over the ice, but he made few big turnovers and lost some battles, and I think on a couple goals against. And Benson's skill was, of course, his fantastic passing. But let's talk about Jones. What did you think of his game?
Well, he caught my eye in a good way right from the get-go. And I'm, in these games, I'm always looking for sort of vignettes and projections of how would this skill relate? And now, obviously, this wasn't a game against NHL players, but his ability to separate both with and without the puck from his opponent, he's such a mobile guy, and he can skate, good lateral skating, four-way skating, the scouts call it, and really you could see that in his game. Going back to collect pucks, he would just create a bigger gap between him and the guy that was chasing him, turn the corner, get his head up, get the puck moving north, which he did a lot of times in that game. Just get the puck going in the right direction. And I really liked how aggressive he was in the offensive zone. He was really jumping into the holes and looking for opportunity, offensive opportunities, not just a matter of taking what was there, but forcing things a little bit. Notably, his goal that he scored, admittedly in garbage time, but also arguably the entire game is garbage time in the sense that it doesn't matter what the score is. You want to do what you can do at a given time. And he started that play by collecting the puck outside the blue line, making a good pass into, was it Yamamoto?
Yeah.
Yamamoto fed Benson, and Benson fed a backhand pass in front of the net. The puck headmanned in all three cases of the pass. And who does he headman it to but the guy who started the play back at the red line? Caleb Jones was roared right through the defense to take Benson's wonderful pass and then make the deposit on a red-hot Tyler Parsons and Calgary goal. That was a lovely play, but he caught my eye long before that. Not a perfect game. I mean, he had I think the one goal on the wraparound that was kind of a crappy goal, but both he and Bouchard were engaged with guys at the bottom of the circles, and Colin Larkin got engaged with the same guy Bouchard was with. And the guy behind the net who made the deposit, nobody picked him up, and Skinner got fooled on the shot that was coming in that got deflected wide of the net and pulled him off the one post, and he couldn't make it back to the other post. Is that on the defenseman?
Well, Bruce, that sequence of pain started with the Jones turnover, I think, if you rewind the tape.
Right, just outside the blue line. That was one where he got pinned right just as he was breaking out of the Oilers zone.
Right. So that's on him. Right. I mean, he started that all off. That's the play he's got to make, is get the puck out. That's his primary responsibility.
He got it out, but they got it back in without an offside situation. So it didn't really make much difference that it got.
And then Bouchard lost a battle in the slot, and so did Larkin. Before the scoring play itself was one of those very kind of lucky, fortuitous bounces that ends up in the net after a shot. But the stuff leading up to it was where the mistakes happened. What's that, Bruce?
I say typical Flames goal. Fluky bounce, cheap deflection.
They got a lot of.
They got a few of those yesterday, actually.
Yeah, they did.
In all fairness, they got a few. They got a couple. Like, I kind of gave it to the goalies early in my game report, but tried to pull back a little bit. It just wasn't their day, man. Every shot it would just, go through a screen and it would hit a little hole, or it would take a deflection and, cross them up. I mean, obviously they didn't play well, but also I just don't think they had much luck on their side. And goaltending was in a sense, good news. The Oilers didn't get crushed 7-3 so much as the goals happened to go into one end of the ice and not the other.
So Yamamoto and Marody both flashed their considerable skill, and in some ways, kind of, it's just one game again. But based on everything I've seen of the two players, I really do think that they're going to be in the AHL in October. That's where they should be, and I want to see them both dominate at that level of play. And I expect that they can. I think that on the power play and even strength, those two guys can combine, maybe with Benson, and start to put up some major points. So Tyler Benson was this is his third Oilers training camp. It was his first preseason game with the Oilers, though, in an Oilers sweater. And man, did he looked like everything that it was kind of the storybook game for him. He was everything you would want him to be, and that his NHL skill is his great vision and passing of the puck. And I've seen that in every game that I've seen Benson play. He really sees the ice well, and he made no less than 3 backhanded passes to unleash players in the slot, which is so rare. Even in a kind of a wide open exhibition game, Bruce, to see that skill where a guy can thread that backhanded pass, often putting it in the air and right onto the guy at that level of play, it was really impressive. And then on the power play, he was wheeling on the right flank, right faceoff circle. He was wheeling around there and looking dangerous, not just kind of wheeling around there to no effect, as we might have seen even from a player as good as Connor McDavid at times last year. He was in that spot and kind of attacking the net and set up Ryan McLeod for a near goal on a nice pass. So I'm hoping that Benson can earn a spot in that position on the power play in Bakersfield. And I really want to see, more than anything else this year, Bruce, I want to see these young players, Caleb Jones, Tyler Benson, Marody, just get a ton of playing time in Bakersfield. And that should be the priority. Like, get Jones 20, 23, 24, 25 minutes a game. Yeah. Get Benson 18, 19 minutes a game, including 2 or 3 minutes on the power play. That's going to be the key for these guys, and staying healthy and getting plenty of ice time.
What I don't want to hear is that Dave Gustin and Ryan Hamilton. No, he's not around anymore. But
Josh Curry, right? Like Josh Curry's a nice little player. but
are getting all the cherry minutes. I just do not want to hear that at any point. And no disrespect to those guys, and I'm sure they can find a place for themselves on the team. But let's get some big minutes for these guys that are reasonably projected to be potential future NHLers, which is the guys that you just mentioned, Jones, Marody, Benson, foremost among them. What I really liked about those Benson passes, and I really liked the little package you put together on your post, David, about Benson, which showed those 3 plays in succession, and they were astonishingly similar. All 3 cases, he was high in the slot. He cut to his backhand, and then he opened the passing lane for a split second. In each case, he just sent a beauty pass, I think aerial pass, through to the guy who was cutting into the open in front of the net, or cutting into the opening in front of the net. Twice Tyler Vessel, and once Caleb Jones for the goal. And after last podcast railing against all the low to high passes that the Oilers power play did last year, this was 3 cases of high to low passes where the puck went from high in the slot to right in front of the net with a great chance. And they were Benson, man. Those were great passes, all of them.
I mean, he projects because of his skill level and his passing. He does project, I think, as someone who could play in the top 6 in the NHL. I mean, that would be the hope.
Absolutely.
Although he might be able to play on the third line, like kind of a Chris Versteeg kind of third line guy, smart player, glue player. But do the Oilers have anyone who can cut fast to the net? Who that if you hit them with a pass, they might be able to do something? Yeah, they've got Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. And if you're smart enough and skilled enough to combine with those players, you don't have to. You just have to have the puck for a few seconds, and if you can get them the puck when they're moving and going to the net, you can get an NHL job and have a pretty nice little 5, 6, 7 year run with the Edmonton Oilers. So this is, of course, me getting ahead of myself based on one game, but it's not just one game. I've seen Benson play now over the years, like in the U17. What was it? I think the U17 tournament in his draft year, before he got drafted and before he got hurt. He had the same kind of incredible vision that he displayed in that game. I mean, it's why he was the first pick in the Bantam draft. I mean, he was really physically big at that time as well for his age, but he's always had that high level of skill. And what a relief. And it was great to see it. It was fantastic to see it.
Just to see him in the lineup, but to see him, in a starring role, which I tabbed him as Edmonton's best forward in yesterday's game. And I know you did the same. Low Tide did the same. I mean, he stood out. He had a very strong showing.
Remember that story about
his debut?
Remember that story about Bob Green? Like, so they had the first round that year. I guess that's the 2016 draft, is it? Or the 2015 draft? 2015 draft?
2016.
2016 draft.
And they got Pouliot.
Yeah. So they have the first round of that draft, and then the Oilers have, I think, the second pick of the next round. Anyway, Bob Green was up. He said he could hardly sleep that night because he was so worried that he wasn't going to get Benson. That someone else was going to grab him. Let me just have a look here. I got the drafts up in front of me. Tyler Benson was taken 32nd. Yeah. Right
before a lot of people were saying, "Oh, I should have took Alex DeBrincat at that time." And to the credit of many of those people, they were saying that right at the time.
Yes, they were.
And DeBrincat is already in the NHL and a 20-plus goal scorer in his rookie campaign. So Benson's got some catching up to do. But I mean, you can lay some of that on injury. I'm certainly not going to write him off as a prospect because he had setbacks. And I'm certainly not going to say, well, if he's not as good as Alex DeBrincat, that means he was a failed draft choice. I mean, there's different degrees of success. If he turns into an NHL player out of the second round, hey, that beats what the Oilers have been doing for the last 30 years.
Yeah, I mean it's DeBrincat. Like a lot of teams could have had Alex DeBrincat, Bruce. Like he was taken 35th, 36th, 37th, 39th. Okay, so
every team passed.
So and a lot of the people who wanted Alex DeBrincat were probably overjoyed when the Oilers took Marco Roy too. Like a few years earlier. So
maybe.
I'm always a little skeptical. Like you should have taken the one guy who was drafted below him. that I like, it's easy to cherry pick your successful, like anyone to cherry pick their successful moments.
Like I said, it's not just people looking after the fact and saying, "Hey, look at Nicholas Lidstrom turned out to be a great player. We should have picked him in the first round that year, where he came completely out of left field." I mean, Brinkat was a pretty known force at that point, and had a connection with McDavid, which was what some people saw. But I mean, enough about him. They got the guy they did get. Is he's going to make his own story, and I'm not going to hold Alex DeBrincat's performance against him as some kind of a little black cloud that's going to follow him around like Joe Bitflick.
Well, just remember how many times have we heard? How many times have people brought up in the last few years? Well, they could have taken Zach Parise instead of Pouliot.
Yeah,
or they could have taken
Getzlaf instead of Pouliot.
Yeah, or they could have taken
make the trade.
Matthew Barzal. I mean, lots of teams could have taken Parise. Lots of teams could have taken Barzal. So it's just a little bit, I think, overstated. Some of that particular kind of critique. I think you can make it if you want, but my eyes glaze over when I see it, because all kinds of to blame that specifically on one team when everybody missed a certain player, I think is an overstatement of that particular team's incompetence. When everyone's incompetent, they're all seeing something that shied them off the player at that time. So they're all wrong, not just one team. Let's talk about Bouchard and Bear. What did you think of them, Bruce?
Well, Bouchard with the puck on the stick, terrific, really. He's a really good passer. What I like about his passing is he seems pretty selective, and he can make his decisions pretty quick. When he gets a chance to get his head up and look, he'll make an attacking pass, but it's not like he feels like he needs to do that every time he's got the puck, and he'll make a quick pass to his partner or to a forward in low support, just get the puck over into a safe area. And if this takes 2 or 3 D-to-D passes to set it up, so what? If that's not every play is just a direct counterattack. But on one particular play, when that was the play, there was a play where the Calgary guy was coming over center with the puck, the winger, and he got squeezed off on the boards, and the puck kind of skittered off his stick and towards Bouchard, who was at the Edmonton blue line. And while the puck was coming to him, Bouchard had one glimpse up the ice, and then the puck was on the stick, and bang, one touch from it coming to him to being on Joe Gambardella's stick for a clear-cut breakaway. It was just bang, just so, and within maybe 6 inches from being absolute perfect tape to tape, where Gambardella had to take it a little close to his body. But geez, I mean, it was in the area. You expect any, pass receiver can get 2 hands on the ball. You expect him to catch it, right? It was one of those kind of plays. And Gambardella got, he went in and got a real good shot and got robbed. So there's no assist for Bouchard, but it was more just the vignette of that quick glance and bam. And that was a great play. It was a terrific pass. A number of others. He's good on the backhand pass also, and just even necessarily short passes sometimes, but he puts them into good places. None sort of obvious cough-ups, which Ethan Bear had one of those where he came around behind his own net and he just kind of trickled it out into the slot for nobody in particular. And, but I didn't see any of that from Bouchard. We did see a couple of examples of his shot, and there's 3 things I've noticed about his shot that's pretty consistent. 1 is it's hard, 2 is it's low, and 3 is that it's well placed. And the goal that he was credited with, which I actually don't think he scored,
it hit Marody, didn't it?
Yeah, I thought the one angle showed the puck kind of flutter just as it went past Marody. That I thought I just got a little piece of it, and that's why it beat the goalie. But it was one of those perfectly tippable shots, low and somewhere near the guy's stick, and instead of shooting for the other corner where the guy's screening on one side of the net and the puck's going to the other corner, this was in the area where Marody could get a piece of it. I think he did. Immaterial whether he did. The fact is the puck went through the screen and through the goalie and into the net because it was low and hard and on target. And he had another big bomb from center point that forced a very good save from Parsons, who wasn't screened, I think, on that play. But so you wouldn't expect to necessarily beat a goalie from there. But the shot itself was excellent.
There was a lot to like about that player, isn't there, Bruce? I mean,
With the puck,
he
yes.
gave us a little bit of a alarm with the kind of weak game, but that was in August when weak games might be expected to happen. His offensive ability really is looks NHL translatable. His head is almost always up. I like that, and his hands are out in front of him. He's always ready to pass the puck. He's got really good posture with the puck. And I was trying to think who he reminds me a little bit of. His uprightness and his passing skill reminds me a little bit of Peter Angelo. And again, that's getting ahead of myself and making that, comparison, but that is the level of skill, offensive skill. Now, whether he can be a defensive player like Peter Angelo or even an attacker at the NHL level, but he really does have offensive skill. You can see why he led all CHL prospects in scoring in this draft year.
Not just defensemen, eh? I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah, he can pass that puck. He really can, and he can shoot it, and he's smart with the puck. He's calm with it. So those are all up arrows. Again, I expect him to go back to London this year, and because I think he can get faster and stronger. I think you can see that in his, he's a big rangy guy out there. He's large, but you can see the skating needs a bit of work, and you can see he could probably get stronger, and all these things are going to come. And that was it was an encouraging performance by him, and we saw what I think the Oilers scouts saw in that player, and because a lot of us saw Noah Dobson in the Memorial Cup, and there was a lot to like there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And
toss-up as to who will be the better NHLer, frankly.
It's a toss-up, but you could now, you can start to see, like, okay, we hadn't seen, like novice, we don't watch all the prospects all the time, but now I think there's an understanding of, okay, this is what Evan Bouchard brings to the table, and it's considerable.
Yeah. Now, on the defensive side of the puck, and especially in its own defensive zone, if I could pick a word of what I'd like to see more of from this player, it's assertiveness. And I'd like to see him, there was a little bit of soft coverage around the blue paint where a guy kind of came out from behind the net and tried to stuff it home. And you'd like to see the defenseman just step into and put the shoulder into the guy. And if he gets a jam play, well, the goalie can handle that, but he shouldn't get a chance to take that one last step. And to me, that can be a learned trait. I mean, you like to see it come naturally, but I mean, you hear about, Adam Larson was not the player Adam Larson is today until Scott Stevens taught him a thing or three about physicality and assertive play. And to put a more local spin on it, Jeff Petrie, who we're going to talk about momentarily, I suspect, was he was an unfinished product, and we saw that guy just in summer camps because, of course, he was a college player, and then he came up to the AHL. But that was one of the things that he had to learn, and even in his early years as an Oiler, was to take that extra, dip that shoulder in and battle for the position, even if he didn't have the puck at the time, to battle for position in front of the net. And, it doesn't happen overnight. I mean, the player Evan Bouchard is at still 18 years old today. It's not what he's going to be at 22 or 23. And those are definite things that they can be learned traits. And he doesn't necessarily have to be great at it. You just don't want to be real, but not good enough at it. You want to be adequate at minimum. And so that's an area of his game that I think he can work on, and I agree with you that London is the likely destination for most of the season.
Larson's an interesting comparison, Bruce, because when he was a junior player, he looked like he might develop into kind of an offensive force at the NHL level. Adam Larson did. He was just so good with the puck. He seemed like a real heads-up hockey player, and then he became this kind of hacking, slashing, whacking, defensive shutdown monster. In 2016-17 with the Oilers, he really was. Like, yeah. I mean, and then he got
with Jersey.
But we've also seen flashes of skill with Larson, and I saw that, and I see it with Russell too. And I wrote a post on the weekend actually about this. How what I'm hoping to see. Torrey Krug was on Spitting Chicklets podcast, which is a fantastic podcast. Paul Bissonnette and Ryan Whitney are hugely entertaining hosts.
Wisecrackers, both of them, right?
And tell, all kinds of stories about the sex escapades of NHLers. They really let it out. And it's so rare because most interviews with NHL players are so boring. They are so tedious. But anyway, they had Torrey Krug on. Yeah. They had Torrey Krug on, and then Krug was talking about how essential it is for NHL defensemen to move the puck fast. And that's his whole game. Like, you don't have to defend if you can move the puck out.
Certainly Torrey Krug's game, yeah.
And I think it could be much more. I think there was a certain element of, I don't know what it was going wrong with the defensemen last year on the Oilers, but with Benning, Larson, Russell, all these guys were too cautious and not moving the puck as well as I think they're capable of. And I just hope with a new coach in there and Trent Yanni that they all just take a slight step up, because I think they all have that ability to be slightly better transition players, moving the puck faster and taking not more risks, but not bad risks, but taking smart risks more often and encouraged to do so. And so that's what I'm hoping to see from Larson. So conversely with Bouchard, like you say, hopefully he'll step up as a kind of maybe it'll be, instead of Scott Stevens teaching Adam Larson, it'll be Adam Larson teaching Evan Bouchard the dark arts. So Ethan Bear, Bruce, what did you think of Ethan Bear?
Well, I liked his passing. Like they had three defensemen that were really moving the puck smartly yesterday, and Jones, Bouchard, and Bear. Certainly the three that you would probably expect. And other than that one play I described earlier, where it was kind of a prayer pass into nowhere in particular, he was putting pucks on tape. I found one thing I noticed with him that I noticed in the NHL last year, but a little bit more concerning maybe at this level, was puck, at least two occasions, maybe a third, where a puck was shot deep and he was in retrieval mode, and it looked like he was going to win the race easily. But by the time they got to the red line, the marauding flame forward was close enough to create a puck battle and caused either a turnover or a rush play, just a puck fired around the rim rather than a controlled play. And I compared that to the Bobsey twin of Ethan Bear, Caleb Jones, that we've always compared the two. And Jones was, again, I think as I described earlier, he would separate, get the puck, make the turn, do the Torrey Krug thing, get the puck moving north. And even if he's never involved in the play again, if the defenseman can just contribute that part of it, that's huge. And yesterday I saw, between the two of them, I saw more of an NHL future in Caleb Jones than I did in Ethan Bear in that one game.
Yeah, he when you look at the skill set, there's an argument to be made, and I think a good one, that Jones may have a higher ceiling as a hockey player because of his skating ability. He's just a better skater than Ethan Bear. And Bear is a more composed player with the puck, and he's smarter with the puck right now. But Jones could get, that's something you can learn. Improving your skating, well, you can improve your skating too. So we'll see. Maybe Bear can do that. It's kind of a race. Like, who can Bear improve his skating? Can Jones improve his decision making? I thought it was one of the games I've liked. I didn't see Bear play a lot at the AHL level, because the games I was watching at the AHL level, I watched at the end of the year in Bakersfield
when he was up here.
He was up here. So that was his most composed game I've seen him as a pro with the puck. I just thought time and again he made the right play. And if he goes to the AHL level this year, if Bear's there, and I think he probably will be, I think he's going to have a really great season down there. The guy at that level of play, at this level of play, he's a really sharp defenseman making plays with the puck. And I really liked his game in a lot of ways. And I did think, I've always been concerned with his skating. I've consistently mentioned it, both on mainly defensively, but I thought he did look to me a little bit faster that game than he had last season. So it's early to tell. I mean, he's talked about working on it and about getting in better shape. So I thought I did see some indication of that in his game. I thought he looked good, and I was encouraged by him as well.
One play that grabbed my eye in particular was Calgary had some pressure on, and goalie, I guess it was Skinner at that point, made a save, and the puck kind of got punted out into the slot. And Barrett corralled the rebound, and you think the natural play is just to fire the thing out of there into the corner, or dump it up into the neutral zone or whatever. But he had the composure. He got the puck on the stick, and he realized that the Calgary guys weren't immediately in position to check him. And he just held it for a split second, got his head up, made about a 15-foot pass to the center, cruising through the zone in front of him, and away they exited the zone with speed. And that, exiting the zone with speed like that is such a huge part of hockey and becoming huger all the time. And it's not just the speed of the defenseman, but it's also the good, heads up, smart first pass, and that's what he showed on that play in spades. That was just a little play, but sort of that's a nice composure, nice execution.
That was the point that Torrey Krieg and Ryan Whitney were making, is that like the dump out is the new turnover in the NHL. And the expectation now, especially if you're playing with really good attackers like Nugent Hopkins and McDavid, is put the puck on their stick. Just don't get it out.
Right.
Hit them on the tape. And Bear has, it was funny, even last year, Bear, I thought, super struggled in the NHL defensively. He got turned around. He was beat off the rush, but the Oilers had such struggle moving the puck last year that I think the reason he won over so many fans in his short stay in Edmonton was he was actually able to make tape passes, and he was aggressively doing so. We hadn't seen that a whole lot. I mean, Benning struggled all year with that particular skill, and he's really got to get, if he's going to be in the top four this year, and there's some talk of that, Matt Benning's really got to get better at that. He looked like he regressed. As did Larson last year in terms of his passing play. Although I didn't see him at the Worlds, and some people said Larson at the Worlds when he was with Ekman Larson was really doing well moving the puck.
He was he and Ekman Larson were both voted to the first All-Star, the All-Star team of the Worlds, and deservedly so. They were both tremendous. I saw most of Larson's games, and he was doing one of the things that he does that's kind of different. He does this sort of marauding around the offensive zone without the puck, where he just leaves the blue line. He just cruises around looking for openings. Every once in a while, a rebound will come to him or something. And every once in a while, the puck will get turned over and he's in the wrong spot. And, so it's a matter of picking his spots. But his instincts are very interesting, and he does almost all of it without the puck. But he'll go way down low below the goal line and handle it and move it. But he when he's feeling his oats, he doesn't just stand stationary on the point. He really moves around in the O-zone, and it's an interesting approach. I keep thinking, and I still think, there's more offense in that guy than we've seen. And of course, there is more offense than he gets credited for, simply because all of his points are scored at even strength. He doesn't get the last power play point Adam Larson scored was in 2011 in his rookie season, first half of his rookie season. I mean, it's ridiculous. Like, it's almost impossible to believe. I mean, he only gets about 2 minutes a year on the power play, and obviously with reason. But at the same time, what that does tell you is that the points that he does get, 20 a year, but they're bought and paid for.
He doesn't have much of a shot, so I can see why he's kept off the power play, because you have to have a shot.
But you know what? In the Worlds, he got a goal on a rocket one time, perfectly placed one-timer right from the middle of the slot, bomb in the net.
Yeah. So, every dog will have his day. Every cat will mew.
I do compare him to the Swedish Gator, and he does remind me of Jason Smith, who also scored about 20 points a year, and his big value was just being a bastard, getting in the faces of the opponents, and winning puck battles, and getting breaking up, zone time and getting the puck moving north.
Bruce, let's talk about so we've talked about Bouchard and Bear. So I think for the first time in maybe ever, when you look at the Oilers' top prospects, the top 25 prospects, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 of them, Bruce, are right shot.
Defensemen.
Holy moly, including the number 1, the number 4, the number 12, Philip Berglund, the number 16, Joel Persson, the number 19, Phil Kemp, the number 22, John Marino, and the number 25, Ryan Mantha, who's out with an eye injury and career in jeopardy with that. I think Kemp and Marino are kind of ticking up. They've had some good years at the U.S. college level, but they're kind of what does Lowtie call them? The watch and
Draft and follow.
So let's move on to Persson and Berglund, because they're both older Swedish prospects. Berglund is 21 this year. He'll be 22 in the spring. I think Persson's 24 or 25, and I think he's 24 this year. And both of them are right shot demon. And Berglund, apparently, Persson was a key player on a team, on the Vaxjo team that made it to the Swedish championship last year. And really smaller skilled power player. And Berglund is playing on the power play this year for his team in the Champions League and earning some plaudits there. So the Oilers have 4 guys in Bouchard, Bear, Berglund, and Persson who are real challengers, real possibilities for NHL jobs. Probably like not this year, but next year and the year after. And the Oilers have help coming on the right side, which is really encouraging.
Yeah, well, just to step back and look at the bigger picture for a minute, when Peter Chiarelli took over the Oilers in spring of 2015, this was a couple months after the Jeff Petrie departure.
Fiasco.
And at that point, the Oilers had left-hand defensemen, Clefbaum, Ference, McKeaton, Marinson, Ollie, Davidson, Hunt, Musil, Osterley, Simpson, Gernat, Betker, LaLegia, Gustafson, Lagesson that were all in the system. And for right-hand defensemen, they had Schultz and Fane, period. 2 right-handed defensemen. And since then, Peter Chiarelli has made it his mission, it seems like, to collect right defensemen. He's drafted in 2015 Ethan Bear and John Marino, 5th and 6th round. In 2016, Berglund in the 3rd round, Vincent Desharnais, who's not in our top 25, in the 7th. In 2017, just Phil Kemp in the 7th. In 2018, Evan Bouchard in the 1st round, and Michael Kesselring, another guy outside of our top 25, but who I think is a sort of a faint hope from the lower down the list of being something, and we just don't know yet. Michael Kesselring. That's 7 defensemen drafted. He also signed as free agents Joel Persson and Ryan Mantha, and of course Matt Benning, who went right into the NHL so quickly that he never even showed up on our prospect list first or last. He was signed 1 August, and by that October he was already playing in the NHL. So that one paid off, at least with an NHL player. And of course then the trades, which you can argue about the value of the trades, but one of his early trades was to bring in Eric Greiba, and then of course the big one for Adam Larsson. So that's 12 right-handed defensemen that have been acquired and brought into the organization in a 3.5 year span, and only Greiba is gone.
You know, it's a sign of Chiarelli has made some mistakes, clearly, but that is a sign of someone who's got a plan, who recognized a huge weakness. I mean, Bruce, not only did they have no right, like Schultz and Fane were free agents, not only did the Oilers have no right shot demon to speak of, in terms of depth, at least, they didn't even they hardly drafted them for about 10 years.
When they got one, they challenged him with a 1-year contract in his UFA season.
What a stupid mistake picking Mark Fane over Jeff Petrie, essentially. Like, I think that's on McTavish, if I'm not mistaken. And it was just a terrible misreading of Petrie's talent as compared to Fane's talent. And Petrie he's just such a better defenseman than Mark Fane. He can skate. He's got NHL wheels. His passing skills were superior. Everything, his defensive play was superior. Everything about Jeff Petrie was better than Mark Fane. But that's who the Oilers ended up with instead of Petrie, because they refused to commit long-term to Jeff Petrie when they had that opportunity.
Summer of 2014, that's when they signed Fane to a 4-year contract, and that was the year that they couldn't agree with Petrie. Remember, you and I were driving to Jasper to watch the Billy Moore's Cup, and we got the news while we were driving. We had the chat on the way out that they signed Petrie to a 1-year extension that was going to take him to UFA, and his ticket out of town was written at that moment. Like, there was no way that he was going to be anywhere but on an airplane to some other NHL city at the trade deadline, and they wound up selling low on him because they really had no bargaining power.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, it's just...
Anyway, it's suffice to say that for all his flaws, I mean, Chiarelli has addressed the problem. You might say the way he addressed it, you don't agree with, but you can't say, well, he didn't do anything about it. Because we got this long list of right defensemen. I agree with you that the real wild cards here are Persson and Berglund, who are kind of out of sight but not out of mind, and two right shooting Swedish defensemen. What's not to like, right? And Berglund in particular, some of the reports coming down. There's a guy that one of the commenters over at Low Tide's blog who goes under the pseudonym Swedish Poster. And he seems to be some kind of an insider with a good knowledge of the Swedish system, and he has had repeatedly positive comments about Philip Berglund in particular.
He's got good size, Berglund. He's every year he seems to get more playing time and a few more points.
He's got big minutes.
And now now he really seems to be taken off. So it's really hopeful, and with Berglund as a prospect as well. And he's is he the same age as Bear?
Yeah, he's actually younger. I think he was drafted in, I'll get you an exact age here in a minute. He was drafted with the last pick of the 3rd round in 2016, May 10th, 97. Oh, I guess he's the exact same age as Bear. He was a 19-year-old by that point.
Okay. So the Rightorium. It's good to see. It's really good to see. I mean, Mo Sarda, Wheaton Oil, has done a really great, did a really great post looking at just what a difficult time left shot defensemen have playing the right side in the NHL in terms of just clearing the puck out of their own zone. And a few of them can do it, but most of them really suffer and play better on the other side. And Chris Russell's in that camp. And Chris Russell gets a lot of criticism, but he's a defenseman who's had to consistently try to make clearing plays on his backhand, which is a really difficult thing to do. And nonetheless has been okay at it. But if he had been on his left side the last 2 years, probably would have had more success. I think he's been a really good NHL player, a good NHL player, at least in my books. He's been good, okay to good, playing on the right side. But maybe if he'd been on the left side.
He reminds me of, to again make an analogy from another sport, he reminds me of a pretty good second baseman who's being asked to fill in at shortstop because the regular shortstop isn't available for some reason.
That's hard to do.
And sure, he can get to the ground balls, but maybe the throwing arm from the deep hole in short just isn't quite there. You don't have quite the full capability of the player in best position. And on his wrong side, I mean, a lot of those plays that we talked about earlier, the dump out, what I call a punt, again to analogize another sport, where a guy just dumps it out and the other team gets it in the neutral zone, and they're in position to lead the next attack, which normally they do about 70% of the time, I believe, after a dump out. And that's Russell. I think at the best of times you're going to get some of that from Russell, but especially playing on his wrong side, there's sometimes there's limited options, and just flip the puck up and out of danger. And I think coaches maybe still overvalue that a little bit. I think that's something that they're coming around to seeing. And our friend Mo Sarda, Wheaton Oil, who's a great follow on Twitter, by the way, and a very insightful hockey guy, he put together a tremendous post on that very subject.
Best use of analytics in a post that I've seen in many months. Like, I just thought, it's these were credible individual stats struck me, and made a really compelling argument for the need to have right shot defenseman. And hey, the Oilers got a few coming up, but maybe not. Maybe they're still going to have a guy this year. And the question is, who's going to go over there? And one of the guys who might go over there is holding out right now, Bruce, Darnell Nurse. I've always thought he might look good on that side because he's just so mobile and can carry the puck. If the Oilers need to put someone over there, maybe Nurse is the guy, but he's still not signed. So I'm not worried until he doesn't show up first day. It's all just chit chat until then. So I'm not getting worried about it until then.
I thought this would be done last week. The camp is coming together, but of course it's still a rookie camp, and so Nurse's own camp begins when the pros come in later this week. But it's time to get down to brass tacks and get something done here. Come on, it's not to anybody's benefit to stage whether one man lockout. Whatever. It's the same principle. Who wins by butting heads while the season goes on without you?
Well, the Oilers might be fighting hard to keep the cap space they need to bring in another defenseman. This is Kurt Levins has been our cult of hockey colleague, has been on top of this situation all summer and has been kind of leading the pack in terms of kind of projecting and getting it right on what might happen here. And Kurt's been saying, the plan seems to be bring in another right shot defenseman, possibly. Maybe I don't know if Kurt's mentioned Justin Falk, but that seems to be the name that's out there. And a lot of people don't like Justin Falk, and I'm not going to speak definitively on the guy's level of play because I didn't see him play 20, 30 times, and I didn't watch him closely last year. But in the snippets I've seen, Justin Falk is a really interesting hockey player. I mean, he can run a power play and he can fire the puck. And I understand the rumor is he was a little bit out of shape last year, but he's on the block and he's not going to cost much except for his contract. And if the Oilers can afford him, they could do worse third pairing right shot D man. I'd rather the Oilers use all available cap space and bring in Justin Falk than have any remaining cap space and not bring in a guy like him. So if they can afford him, if they can make that work under the cap, and they can get Justin Falk for not much, not much sounds like Drake Caggiula or Zach Kassian and maybe a mid-round pick. I mean, I'm okay with that deal. I'd like to see that happen.
I heard second round pick and Kassian or possibly Jujhar Khaira, which I know I would rather it be out of those two guys. And because he's got 2 years to run, Falk, at $6 million real dollars and 4.8 something cap hit. So there's an argument to be made that a trade for Falk would be, from Carolina's perspective, a bit of a salary cap dump.
It would be, definitely.
They have three other righties. So the idea that you're going to have to give a first rounder and a hotshot prospect and an NHL roster player to bring in this guy because he's a proven right shot defenseman, I don't see it in that particular case, and I would never pay that price for this guy, personally.
What would you pay? I would pay Caggiula and a fourth, or Kassian and a fourth for him. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would do that if you can fit him under your cap, Bruce. I would do that. Well, would you do that?
Kassian goes a little bit further. I mean, Caggiula or Kassian, you're talking about $1.5 to $2 million. Khaira being so cheap, but that's you're not solving your cap problem by trading away a guy that's an NHL player playing for NHL minimum salary. So
that'd be a bad trade. The Khaira trade would be bad. I agree
from that. But Falk, some of his underlying numbers that I know you strongly believe in, Corsi for percentage of 55.7% last year. Like Carolina had 5 shot attempts to every 4 for the other team while Falk was on the ice. And yet he wound up the season minus 26, right? Now, both of those stats have their critics, but the fact is that he started in the offensive zone almost 60% compared to defensive zone, almost 3-2. So they were sheltering him, and yet he scored 12 points at even strength. Like Chris Russell, the much maligned Chris Russell had 19 points at even strength. Justin Falk, the offensive stud that some see, had 12. So I don't know what the hell. I mean, all of
Sounds
these
like he
things.
was out of shape, Bruce, and he wouldn't be on the block if he had a good year last year. I mean, players, they can dip and slide, and maybe they need a kick in the butt. But I mean, he does have some offensive talent. So, like, if you were counting him on your top four, I would say that's kind of scary. But as your third pairing guy, Justin Schultz, Kevin Shattenkirk on your third pairing, he's getting paid, of course, like a top four guy at that amount. But if again, and this is all dependent on, I haven't worked out the cap, and I can't. I've read a number of posts now on long-term injury replacement, how that works. I still can't figure. I can't figure it out. But if presumably the Oilers can, and if they can make this work under the cap to bring in Falk and just give up a fourth line winger, not Jujhar Khaira, not Jujhar Khaira, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that deal. That's my position on it, and hope I'm okay. So if they, with Nurse, to bring this back to Nurse, maybe the fight is over this. They can only make it work under the cap if they can keep Nurse at a certain number, and that's what they're trying to do. So that's probably why this is stretching out a little bit, maybe. And if that's the reason, that's a good reason to bargain hard.
Here's the thing. Like, it's a no-win for Peter Chiarelli in some camps, in that if he were to just knuckle under and sign Nurse at Nurse's figure, he would get crucified for another overpay. All the talk about Chiarelli is overpays. Nobody mentions Jujhar Khaira in those conversations, but they talk about Kajula, and they talk about, of course, Draisaitl and so on. And yet, when he's bargaining hard on a guy, and then he gets criticized for not coming to terms with a core player or whatever. And I wonder what's the winning position for the GM in these negotiations. Is he supposed to bargain hard or not?
The winning position for Peter Chiarelli, Bruce, is to win the Stanley Cup. I mean, even when they won 2 rounds in the playoffs, I mean, the Leafs haven't won any rounds in the playoffs, right? Under this new management, and they're like the geniuses of the NHL. The best management team since Sam Pollock was running the Canadiens is in Toronto. They have yet to win a round in the playoffs under this group. Chiarelli's team won a round in the playoffs, and almost won the next round. Of course, you could say that Toronto, they almost got to this. But they did win a round. But Chiarelli's the dumbest guy ever in the history of running an NHL team. So the truth somewhere in the middle, obviously. He has done more right moves, I think, than wrong moves, in my opinion. And he certainly has done more right moves than the previous Oilers managers. That might not be saying much, but
I think some of it, to be fair to the critics, some of them are saying he does okay on the smaller moves and he just gets crushed on the big ones that matter the most. So, and there's certainly a better case that can be made that has a little bit of balance to both sides of it. So now, getting back to Justin Falk for a minute, you mentioned him as being okay on the third pairing. Well, you know what? In his NHL career, which started in 2011, so now 7 years into it, last year was his least amount of average ice time per game, least of 7 years, 22 minutes and 16 seconds. That's not a third pairing defenseman. Now, maybe he should be, but he's been a minute muncher. His career average is 23-25 per game. Like, that's a top pairing.
Yeah.
For an average.
So my argument is he's a Schultz guy, though. He'd probably thrive, at least starting out on a third pairing. You're not expecting much, so he'll thrive there. And he hasn't. I don't think you could say that he's been a force in the top four. Maybe he's been overused, and maybe that's why they want to get rid of him, because he's just not good enough to be a top pairing. Like, he's kind of played top pairing minutes, it sounds like. So, but if you're bringing him in to play on your third pairing, or maybe on your second pairing, that sounds like it could work. Probably, maybe that sounds like a better idea.
Well, also there's this, like, before last year's poor 8-goal season, the 3 previous years he had 15, 16, 17 goals from the blue line. That's pretty significant.
That's Dougie Hamilton numbers
Yeah.
and numbers,
Yeah.
and everybody loves Dougie Hamilton. Like, and again, Bruce, I haven't seen Justin Falk, so I'm speaking more strongly than I probably should in terms of a trade. But it's not like Cassian or Kajula. When I say I'm okay with trading Cassian or Kajula, and only if it's like, this isn't giving up a ton. I'm convinced of that. So that's why I'm okay with that, because you're not giving up Jujhar Khaira. And if you can make it work under the cap, so this just seems like a smaller, sensible move that you could make that might really pay off. Maybe it won't, but maybe it will. And it seems like it has more chance of doing so than not. So that's why I like it.
And of course, Carolina just brought in Dougie Hamilton, who's a premier right shot power play running defenseman. So they may be ready to turn the page. And of course, they've got a couple other pretty decent righties. Brent Pesce is a righty defenseman, Trevor Van Riemsdyk. So if you're running your three pairs and you have Hamilton, Pesce, and Van Riemsdyk, Justin Falk is a little bit of a luxury item or a luxury tax in that situation. And from a Carolina, like, one of the things that I hate about trade rumors is that it seems like a lot of them make zero sense for at least one of the teams. But in this case, you're talking about Carolina moving on from Justin Falk. It makes 100% sense. And you're talking about Edmonton going out and looking for a right shot, offensive minded defenseman for 2 years, which is what he's got left on his pact. While we're waiting for all these other guys you and I were just talking about throughout this podcast, there's logic to that trade. And if there's logic there, well, okay, at least we can talk about it without saying, well, why in the hell would this team do that? Which is usually my first response to a lot of the trade talk that goes around out there. And there is smoke. I've heard independently about Justin Falk, and of course, with the Sekera situation, they can add salary, but not before the season starts. So it makes sense that a trade might take place, for instance, after the Oilers came back from Europe, but very early in the season before Carolina has to spend a whole ton of money. And there may be something, there may be a log in the fire there, and the Oilers are waiting to see if Bouchard tears it up in training camp and looks like an NHL player. That might change their thinking. Or they might just say, well, we'll take Bouchard with us to Europe, and then we got this Falk deal in our pocket that we'll make a couple days after the season once we can put Sekera on long-term injured reserve. And
I hope they're not waiting for Bouchard, Bruce. Like, honestly,
no, I'm just throwing it out
they
there.
might be, but I just hope that's not the mindset, because it's always the mindset at Edmonton. It doesn't work out that well usually. I mean, it was a mindset last year with Yamamoto. Like, is he going to be the new Eberle? And he could solve our problem. And he looks great. Oh, he's great in cap. We problem solved going into the season. We're all rubbing our hands in glee, and that didn't work out. And it rarely works out.
The old Eberle needed more years back in junior.
Yeah.
He turned pro at he graduated from junior as opposed to being dumped into the NHL as a teenager. And it worked out fine. And Yamamoto's on the similar track. So I got I wasn't too sure the 9-game trial was that great of an idea last year, to be frank. But we had, at least he's got that little bit of experience, and hopefully that'll help him going forward. But it's the Oilers, they made that mistake they make that move consistently with forwards. They had 6 top 4 draft picks in a 7-year span. I mean, how embarrassing is that? And they used all 6 of them on forwards, and all 6 of them started the immediately following season in the NHL. With defensemen, different. They picked Oscar Klefbom in the first round. He was on our prospects list 4 different summers before he lost his rookie, his Calder eligibility, and so was automatically, no longer eligible for our series. Darnell Nurse, he was on our list for 3 years because I sent him back to junior 2 times and then brought him up and quickly into the NHL, but only when he was graduated from junior. And I anticipate that's what we'll see also with Evan Bouchard.
So if you look at the list, Bruce, Gagne drafted the 6th overall, Payarvi 10th overall, Yakupov 1st overall, Then there's Puljujärvi and Draisaitl. I wonder if with Yakupov, Gagne, and Puljujärvi, if they'd all spent at least one more year, I guess Yakupov in Russia, maybe a couple years in Russia, Puljujärvi another year or two in Sweden, Gagne another year in junior. I wonder if it would have made a difference with those players, and we can't answer that, but I wonder if it would have actually made a difference in the long-term development of those three guys, Puljujärvi, Yakupov, and Gagne, who never really panned out like we hoped. If they had gone back, would it have helped them, do you think?
Puljujärvi got 1 year in Sweden, and he came over as 19-year-old. And Eberle, Puljujärvi, and Hall all came into the team at the same time. Three straight first-round picks in 08, 09, and 10. And that was the Hope team, of course, because Linus Ullmark showed up on that team as well. And they were all wingers, and that was they kind of got in each other's way a little bit. And that was a bit of a problem. Yakupov, he's kind of a special case in that first
Yes,
overall draft choices. I mean, if you're going to point the finger at the Oilers for rushing first overall draft choices, well, I'm sorry. The last first overall draft choice, who was a forward who didn't play in the NHL the immediate next season, was Mike Modano, 1989. Like, it is a constant that the very best 18-year-old players are deemed NHL ready, and they wind up playing the next year. In Yakupov's case, there was the Russian factor. People were, the concern was he didn't want to go back to Sarnia. He was either going to play pro, and if it wasn't going to be in Edmonton, it was going to be in Russia. Of course, it was the lockout season, so he did play half of the year for the Russian in the Russian team in his home state there, and then came over halfway through the lockout season to join the Oilers. So they were a little bit between a rock and a hard place in terms of what they could do with that guy. But in retrospect, the 2012 draft wasn't a good one, and the Oilers certainly didn't get a pick that, I mean, he's the biggest bust from first overall position, arguably this century.
So he had 18 points in 22 games in the KHL before he came over that year. He was doing really well. I agree with you, Bruce. I just think it was kind of the speculation on Yakupov is the least fruitful because it was what was going to happen was going to happen. He's a first overall pick. He's going to play here as soon as possible. He did score 17 goals in 48 games that first year. Everyone was really enthusiastic about him. But he's just clearly shown himself to be a player who has major holes in his game. And he in the end went to like St. Louis and Colorado, and then no one wanted him. And so he washed out of three cities, all for the same reasons. And I think with Puljujärvi and Gagne, though, an argument could have been made that maybe they would have been better suited to Gagne, certainly. Like, he had that huge year with Kane. He would have been better off going back to junior, and Puljujärvi would have been better off spending at least another year in Sweden. And how would they have been better off? Well, they would have been more physically, more mature, just more ready to maybe play a different kind of game. Maybe Puljujärvi would have had more offensive confidence. Maybe Gagne would have realized earlier that defense was absolutely critical to his success in the NHL. And more ready to, just more mature to hear a message like that. I don't know, but I think a strong argument could have been made with both of those two guys that they would have been better off. So, and certainly with Bouchard, that's what I see. I see a player who just looks like from what I've seen of him so far, I really like what I see. But man, I see a guy who could go back to junior easily and be just fine going back to junior. So,
well, Bouchard at least is among the oldest players in his draft class, so closer to being physically mature. Gagne, with his August birthday, he was among the very youngest in his draft class.
Yeah.
And wind up like instantly in the NHL, from a slot outside the top 5 in the draft. It was probably pushing the envelope. Now, he did have 49 points as an NHL rookie at age 18. Pretty impressive. But his game never really rounded out. And you kind of wonder, with more than one of these players, if a slower path to the bigs might have resulted in a more rounded player.
Yeah. Well, there we go. Unsolved mysteries of the NHL. So Bruce, let's leave it there. I guess we got Tuesday. Is there a game Tuesday?
Yeah, the Oilers are playing a home game against the combined Nate and McEwen teams. So I guess kind of the top 10 players from each program that beat the Oilers 2-0 last year, although the Oilers had 49 shots in that game. They just couldn't score. And then on Wednesday, there's a rematch between the Oilers and Flames in Red Deer. And I'm actually going to go to that game, and we'll get a live look at these guys and hopefully have a good report on Wednesday night of what I see in 3 dimensions compared to what we saw on our internet screens yesterday in 2.
So there's been a little bit of heat because the Flames only charge $5 for their game, and the Oilers are charging, I think, 29 for the game. But I understand there's a reason for that it's a fundraiser for Grant McEwen. And so the only thing we don't know is how much of the $29 is going to those 2 programs. Do we know that? I don't think we do. But it could be that there's a good reason. So I think people, until someone actually gets the information about how much money is going to Grant Mac, and there's a difference, of course, of running the show at Rogers Places compared to the Saddle Dome, so it might be slightly more expensive to do that. Who knows? But nonetheless, it sounds like there might be a reasonable explanation for the higher price. And if they are getting most of that money, then I think we should all just shut our yaps. But we don't know the answer to that question.
The Oilers are the home team in the Centrium, as I understand it, and tickets there are $25 compared to $5 in Calgary. Now, maybe just Calgary decided, let's get people in the building and sell them $13 beers. I really don't know what was going on in the Saddle Dome. I do know there was about 10,000 people there, according to the commentators, so that's a pretty good turnout. But they got 2 NHL teams prospects, so 2 level programs, whereas this Nate McEwen business, it's not really even a team they're playing. Like, I sorely miss the old Golden Bears versus Oilers series that ran 20, close to 25 years of games. And when the Oilers played the Golden Bears, they played a team that, obviously it's September, so it's this year's team that's changing up a little bit, but the core of the team stays the same from one year to the next. And of course, the Golden Bears program, second to none in Canadian college ranks. And that game was just such a level playing field. Like, I think the series was virtually tied. I think the Bears were ahead by like 1 game or something when it got closed down. And I don't know what went south on that, but it's disappointing. And I'd love to see them get that straightened out, because there's lots of past history of cross-pollination, or at least cooperation between University of Alberta and the Edmonton Oilers.
Well, they could play both teams and have fundraisers for both teams, and I think there'd be huge support for that. And of course, the bottom line is this is all by choice. Like, you don't have to. No one has to care about the Edmonton Oilers. No one has to go to any of these games. So this is a business. If you don't like it, don't go. Don't watch. Move on in your life and be a happier person. Because so we can complain about it, but it really is just it's an entertainment. It's on a certain level, it's completely meaningless and frivolous. So let's not. I just think you can get worked up about these things, but perhaps it's best to take a step back from that position. I'm not talking about you specifically, fun, right? Bruce. But
I get that. It's supposed to be fun, right?
Yeah, it is. And if you don't think it's fun, just do something else, man. Like,
it's hockey.
Yeah,
I had fun watching the Oilers get creamed 7-3 by the Flames yesterday. I mean, how bad is that? That I'm not desperate to see a game of hockey, but hey, it was fun to watch. Score line be damned.
We love it, man. We're fanatics. So what can you say? It's how bad is that? There's nothing bad about it at all. With the way the world is, all the warring tribes in this world, including in our own society, people warring on each other and politics so heated. I've never found hockey to be a more welcome distraction than I'm finding it right now. Like you go to the Oilers, I have 2 Twitter feeds, one for politics and one for hockey. And I actually have it so my politics stream is not on my main screen on my computer. When I call it up, I see like my Oilers feed, a tweet deck. I have my Oilers. I have my, my Oilers account, and then I have my NHL, because I don't even want to see the political stuff. When I call up my computer every day, it's just nice to have a respite from the fractiousness of the real world into sports. And sports isn't supposed to be about these other debates. And you know, when the other debates actually intrude into the sports world, now I resent it. I don't want to hear about politics when I'm watching sports and thinking about sports. I just want to think about, hey, is Tyler Benson, is he going to actually make it this year? And I want to root for him to make it. And you know, let's have a discussion about Bouchard and Falk, but it's not a serious matter. And I'm really enjoying hockey talk for that reason.
Yeah, well, I'd rather argue with you about hockey than about politics.
I don't think we've ever actually talked politics, Bruce, so it's probably a good thing.
I would, yeah, but that same holds true for pretty much anybody. You know, let's talk about hockey. And sometimes I get a little dismayed at the warring tribalism that exists at some levels on Twitter and other places about hockey. I mean, come on, it's fun. Let's take a step back and enjoy the bloody game.
Yeah, the warring tribalism on hockey was really, I mean, it came up around analytics, but I think a lot of that, and maybe I'm mistaken about this, but I think it's died down. I think there's kind of you know, you have your way of looking at hockey, we'll have our ways, and still there's angry comments, but I might be mistaken, Bruce. I've certainly backed away from those debates and don't care about them at all that much, minimally. Anymore. I just think to me, it's kind of a settled matter what these stats mean and what they are. I guess I'm at peace with it myself. And I don't see as much fighting about it. Maybe I'm just not noticing it. I mean, is there as much fighting? I mean, maybe I've just backed away from it myself, but everyone's still heatedly killing each other.
There are certain hot button issues, right? Taylor Hall. And that you know,
that's not an analytics issue, though. That's just a hockey.
That's right. No, that's right. But there's still like warring sides on things like that. Like, I'm not going to blame it all on analytics, but there's, you know, certainly that has had some contribution, and certainly the recoil against analytics by some of the hardcore old school types. I mean, that's a two-sided thing, right? And they're not just tribes, because of course the analysts and the hardcore old school types will also fight among themselves from time to time, but I would rather get into a relatively good-natured warring tribes against Flames and Canucks fans. You know, let's have a little old-fashioned trash talk of that nature. I'm game for that.
Taylor Hall does get the blood boiling with people, though. That's for damn sure. And you know what? I can get worked up about it too. Like about that too. And you know, but it's the other day when the Taylor Hall rumor, you know, when Bob Stauffer started talking about him coming back to Edmonton, I actually was thinking, hey, that would be cool if he came back to Edmonton. So like I'm kind of on the side, like I'm okay. I'm kind of vaguely okay with the trade on some level. You know, clearly it would have been great for Hall to stay at Edmonton if he could have had a year like he had last year in Edmonton. But on the other hand, I like Adam Larsson too. So I'm not gonna, it doesn't impair my loving of the team, the fact that they made that trade. And it doesn't stop me from really rooting a lot for Adam Larsson. And because Taylor Hall's on another team and he's used as a club to beat up the Oilers, that's where I don't like it. Like I'm okay with him doing okay there, but I hate it to use this club because the fun of hockey is it is kind of tribal, but this is my team. And a lot of the Taylor Hall stuff is Eastern hockey writers using it to kind of beat up the Oilers and make it sound like no one would ever want to play in Edmonton and no one should ever want to play in Edmonton. And that's where I get a little riled up. Like I've heard that too many times over the last decades. That Edmonton is a place that no NHL or would ever want to be, when I know that's not true, because in the 1980s, if you have a good team in Edmonton, lots of guys are going to want to be in Edmonton. And that's the fact.
Buffalo sports writers saying Connor McDavid is wasted in Edmonton. I mean,
that gets me going a little
stuff
bit.
You got to let that stuff kind of go a little bit, because come on. Anyway, it's fun to follow, and it's I mean, you can take it seriously, but there's a certain point where you got to sometimes draw a deep breath and say, you know, in the big picture, it's it's entertainment. It's not the be all and end all. And I say that as a 55-year fan of the game. And I for the most part enjoyed that. There's been some hard moments, but it's the game's still going pretty strong, and I, for the most part, enjoy it. And I'll use that exact word, enjoy. Enjoy it, people. It's fun.
Bruce, thanks for talking today.
Yeah, thanks for listening, everyone.
And in the meantime, and in between times, this has been another edition of the Cult of Hockey podcast.